The story kicks off with our main character, who knows he's been transported to a whole new world. After 9 long years of hitting the books, he was finally about to graduate. But right at that moment, our young guy accidentally discovers that people can use powers. With a look of complete shock, he can barely believe what he just witnessed. Our MC and everyone around him start freaking out when they realize this is a cultivation world. A strange message pops up saying there's been an error and he needs to start over. Hearing this, our guy collapses and starts bawling over his 9 years of wasted studies. But he stops for a second, and an idea sparks as he remembers all those transmigration stories. He figures his own hidden talent must be off the charts, so he heads to an evaluation ceremony. Everyone gathers in front of a giant monument where each person's potential is tested. But the MC's result is just awful, and he breaks down crying, wanting to go home because everything has gone completely sideways. While he was bemoaning his pointless life, a mysterious figure asks him something unexpected. The man asks if he wants to cultivate immortality, leaving him completely stunned. With that, he's taken to a beautiful place in the mountains known as the Qingyuan Dao sect. The sect master, a man named Duas Taiwa, already has a task for the protagonist. The desperate sect master grabs him and begs for his help with an important matter. But the senior brother just sips his tea, not too concerned about the situation. The leader explains they need 8 disciples within a year or their sect will be disbanded. Hearing this, Su Changyu says they just need 1 more person to solve the problem. However, the master says it's not that easy, as all the sects were fighting over new talent. The old-timer complains that other sects were even using honey traps to recruit new members. Some sects would use beautiful young women to convince guys to join them. Despite all that, he managed to recruit the young Yaping, who had 0 talent but would work for free. Our main character is thrilled and says he'll do anything if he can just learn to cultivate. The master then worries the kid will bolt once he finds out the truth, so he cooks up a plan. The idea is simple: pretend to be a grandmaster and teach him a bunch of nonsense. They can string the MC along for a year, and Chanju finds the whole idea pretty amusing. Soon after, the disciple asks his master if he knows the nickname he's gotten from others. Intimidating glare, he describes himself as a disciple with absolutely no talent. But then he unleashes an incredible power, showing that he's actually super strong. Su Changyu boasts that when it comes to putting on an act, he's the best in the entire region. He then strikes a dramatic pose, full of himself, while his master is left wondering about his massive ego. The old man says he just needs to keep the newbie from leaving for 1 year, and everything will be fine. But to the leader's surprise, the senior disciple flatly refuses the request with great conviction. He explains that fooling the kid for just 1 year is too small a goal for his talents. With his chest puffed out, he promises to make the protagonist want to be in the sect even in his next life. His master is impressed by his confidence, and praises him for being such a great actor. Changyu gets so cocky that he swears hell eat entire sword, dipping sauce and all, if he fails this mission. After their chat, he says his goodbyes and mentions hell be waiting for the kid on the back mountain. Changji refuses his master's help to get back, and simply walks away with an air of superiority. He claims he's not the same disciple he used to be, who needed help getting around. The young man makes a very specific hand gesture that catches everyone's attention, though the sect leader is shocked when he recognizes the technique, wondering if it's what he thinks it is. With a serious look, Chanju speaks of a prosperous era, just as his master always wished for. And right after that, he uses a powerful sword skill with just his fingers. The sect master is floored and yells that it really is the legendary sword-flying technique. He doesn't get how it's possible since Changyu hadn't learned a thing in 10 years. But senior brother Changgu just gives his master a smug gesture as if it were nothing. At this, the sect leader's face falls in disappointment as he realizes he's been duped again. The young man laughs and says he was just faking it and actually still needs a ride. Then, as night falls, everything is set for the meeting on the mountain peak. In a stunning setting, Suchange waits alone for the mech's arrival. Despite his cool pose, Hez shivering from the cold, huddling in his clothes. He sneezes and complains about picking such a cold spot just for the atmosphere. Suddenly, he senses someone's presence and perks up because the MC has finally arrived. He immediately straightens up and gets into character to begin his grand performance. The protagonist arrives, exhausted, and marvels at how extraordinary immortals are. Yaping is completely awestruck by the imposing figure he sees before him. Bathed in the light of the full moon, the senior brother looks like a true cultivation master. With a serious and mysterious gaze, he stares down the MC to start his big show. The protagonist watches Suchangyu at the top of the cliff. Suddenly, the senior brother summons blue lightning around his sword, looking like a god. Completely shocked, Yaping wonders if what he's seeing is a true sword immortal. But then our Mac starts to get a weird feeling about the whole situation. He asks himself why a sect that took in a nobody like him would have such an incredible disciple. At that moment, an idea pops into his head, leaving him totally blown away by the possibility. our young man imagines that the sect is actually a secret group of super powerful masters. This gets him all excited, thinking that anyone there could make him incredibly strong. Then our guy starts to remember when he first joined the sect earlier that day. He recalls the whole place, looking like it was falling apart. It was so old and abandoned. He didn't think much of it at the time, but now he thinks the rundown look was a bit over the top. However, even in ruins, the place was impeccably clean, which he found very intriguing. He then puts the pieces together and realizes it was all a disguise to hide their true power. That he's amazed and declares that not even 3 million immortals could compare to his senior brother. Hearing this, Changyu cracks a smile and says he likes the MCS style, taking him under his wing. Changyu loves the compliment, and to return the favor, he decides to put on a little demonstration. He then says he's going to give our young man a great opportunity to improve his powers. He unleashes a powerful blast of energy toward the protagonist. Yi Ping is thrown backward by the force of the blow, completely astonished by the scene. Changju explains that the breeze is a secret art that greatly enhances one's cultivation talent. Our young man is in shock because no ordinary sect would have such a powerful technique. Yipping bows while the senior brother just hides the pain in his arm, but in his head, has laughing because it was just a regular gust of wind and nothing more. Right after, he says that before teaching him the sword, he's gonna ask our young man a question. The MC gets excited as he's seen this in stories where the master tests the apprentice first. With a superior air, the phony master asks him what he thinks is the pinnacle of swordsmanship. Changju gloats internally, planning to say that any answer he gives will be wrong anyway. Yaping becomes thoughtful and takes the question about the pinnacle of the sword very seriously. Our young man thinks the question is incredible and perfectly suited for their current situation. He's sure he's in the presence of a master and ponders how to answer something so profound. He then thinks the answer can't be simple, so he decides to be very cautious. After a full hour, our MC is still thinking, making his senior brother pretty ticked off. Internally, Changyu complains he's gonna freeze to death waiting for the newbie in this spot. He finally answers that the pinnacle of the sword is a single blade of grass that can slice the sun and the moon. Hearing this, Su Changyu is completely dumbfounded by the kid's incredibly over-the-top answer. The concept of a simple blade of grass becomes something extremely powerful in his mind. Our young man imagines a single blade of grass with the power to cut through the heavens and the stars. This leaves Changyu floored because not even he could have come up with a line that impressive. He went too far. Yi Ping asks if his answer was offensive in any way, but inwardly, the senior brother loves the line and decides he's going to use it himself in the future. So he acts like a master and says the MC is aiming a little too high for now. To help out, Changju draws his sword and says he's going to do something for our young man. Then, with a swift movement, he creates an energy mark on the ground in front of him. He says he left a sword mark there so the protagonist can study the technique. He explains that the mark contains the strongest sword intent and that he'll be back in 7 days. With that, our MC is overjoyed, now certain that he's joined a sect of masters. Changju runs off happy as can be, saying he needs to find the others to continue the show. Soon, he finds a girl sitting on a rock in the middle of a bamboo forest. The young woman then asks him what he thought of the new junior brother's talent. She turns around, revealing her beautiful features as she waits for her senior brother's answer. But he scolds her for spying, and she claims she was just curious about the situation. At that moment, Changyu gets the idea to test his new acting skills on his junior sister. He then changes the subject, and the girl is left confused about what's happening. With the air of a grandmaster, he asks her if she knows the pinnacle of swordsmanship. She's puzzled and asks why he's bringing that up all of a sudden. He then declares that the pinnacle of the sword is to use a blade of grass to slice the sun and the moon. The young woman is impressed by his words, and her eyes sparkle with admiration. She compliments his acting skills, and Changyu strikes a proud pose. After the playful moment, he gets serious again, and says she now needs to answer his question. He wants to know how long she thinks it will take the newbie to understand the sword intent. He confesses that not even he understands this, so-called sword intent, and his sister says she doesn't either. The girl gets a look of complete confusion, and can't believe what she just heard. 2 hours later, our protagonist is still on the cliff, meditating. With great seriousness, he sits in front of the mark left on the ground to study it, but the MC thinks it just looks like a crack and starts to doubt his master. He then scolds himself for such silly thoughts, remembering all the proof that his brother is a master. Convinced, he decides he just hasn't tried hard enough and moves closer to the mark. With his eyes gleaming, he becomes super focused, believing he'll get it this time. So, our young man keeps trying to comprehend the secret behind that crack in the ground. Suddenly, a mysterious figure appears reflected in the protagonist's eye. In his mind, a powerful swordsman emerges, surrounded by an aura of blue energy. That figure holds a long sword that glows intensely with incredible power. And right after, the warrior begins to demonstrate his sword techniques for the Mac. His movements are swift and full of power, leaving the protagonist deeply impressed. At that moment, He feels as if a great bell is ringing in his ears as he has an epiphany. He sees 12 sword movements that become clearer and clearer in his mind. Then in his vision, he himself begins to practice with a glowing sword. The MC repeats the movements over and over again to learn them. With each repetition, he gets faster, and his strikes become more precise. He practices non-stop, and his sword movements grow increasingly powerful. Our MC continues training in his mind at an impressive speed. With this, he learns more and more sword techniques, reaching 15 movements. Soon, he has already mastered 20 different movements, and his power grows astronomically. All this knowledge floods his mind like a torrent of divine enlightenment. Back in reality, he opens his eyes, completely shocked by the light from the mark. Sitting on the cliff, Hez confused, not understanding what just happened, but he soon realizes it was all the work of his incredible senior brother. The protagonist remembers the breeze, and believes it boosted his talent to an insane degree. He cries with joy, and regrets ever doubting his brother. Even though Hez exhausted, he tells himself this is just the beginning, and continues to train. 7 days pass, and we see the senior brother's residence high up on the mountain. We find his treasure box, filled with props for his performances. He starts getting ready, grabbing an accessory to tie back his hair and look stylish. With his look complete, he's all set to go check on our young man's progress. Changyu looks up at the sky and comments that's a beautiful day for his plans. With that, he heads out excitedly, saying it's a great day for another one of his performances. We open on a mountainous landscape where a guy is standing on a bridge, looking completely wiped out. The swordsman is totally exhausted and regrets choosing this place to train. He then wonders why everyone thinks being a swordsman is such a walk in the park, and man, does it tick him off. We flash back to 7 days ago, when a young woman asks if he even understands the intent of the sword. The girl starts laughing at him, calling him pathetic for training for 10 years, without understanding the basics. This gets him all riled up, and he gives her a light bunk on the head, telling her that swordsmanship isn't that simple. He explains that his technique is one of the top 10-inch Kingzhou and was used by a famous Taoist. His sword art is divided into 4 parts, representing the seasons spring, summer, fall, and winter. When asked, he says he's reached the proficiency of spring, and the girl doesn't seem impressed. A map shows has barely started, and the young woman calculates it'll take him a solid 100 years to perfect it. The senior brother gets furious with the girl, and yells that one day, she'll see how strong he can be. She then questions just how talented someone would have to be to figure it all out on their own. The senior brother scoffs at the idea, saying the girl is just daydreaming about something impossible. He then explains that the sword's intent is what matters, and with it, a simple attack becomes lethal. But in 10 whole nations, only one expert managed to get close to this power, becoming a legend. The girl still insists, asking what if someone actually managed to reach that level of power. He then says, that's impossible, because not even the greatest genius in 500 years could pull it off. The swordsman reinforces that understanding the sword's intent would be impossible, and we return to the present. He finally reaches his destination, and wonders if his junior brother is awake yet. Looking to the side, the man finds the protagonist on the ground, looking completely wrecked. The protagonist looks like he's been training non-stop, with massive dark circles under his eyes from exhaustion. Seeing the kid's condition, his master is completely shocked, with no idea what happened. The older man then realizes the kid took a story he made up to motivate him way too seriously. At that moment, the man feels a pang of guilt, thinking he's starting to look like the bad guy in this story. He then decides that, for the good of the sect, he'll just roll with it and make it up to the kid later. Our hero then notices his senior brother's presence and greets him with a smile. The man asks how the kid's training is going, and tells him to strike a pose quick. The disciple says he finally got it and thanks him for the opportunity, while the other guy can't believe it. Totally shocked, the senior asks the protagonist to repeat what he just said. Our hero confirms it, saying that including that morning, he has managed to master 400 techniques. Faced with this statement, the older man remains silent, with a look of pure disbelief. Suddenly, he just bursts out laughing and asks if the kid is pulling his leg, since he just drew a simple mark for him. Our hero is confused by the reaction and asks why he's getting that cold laugh. The disciple then thinks that for a true master, 400 techniques must be no big deal. He believes that, with the chance he was given and a little talent, he should have learned 1,000 techniques in a single day. With that in mind, the young man starts to cry, lamenting how weak he is for not learning more. The master tries to console the kid, telling him he doesn't need to lie, as it's normal to fail with this technique. But the kid insists he's not lying, and the senior gets annoyed, telling him to stop showing off. Our hero feels sad, thinking his superior considers him unworthy of learning 400 techniques. So, the young man says that even with little talent, he can learn, because 400 isn't a large number. The swordsman gets furious hearing this, thinking the kid is seriously underestimating the path of the sword. He remembers his own suffering to improve, and how common people are mocked for their slow progress. So the man decides to teach the kid a lesson, and challenges him to show off the techniques he's learned. Our hero readily accepts the challenge, and the master thinks the stubborn kid is finally going to get a taste of reality. We see the two of them on top of a mountain with a vast blue sky above them. The protagonist then draws his sword, which begins to glow with a powerful golden energy. In the blend of an eye, he lunges forward with impressive speed, leaving a trail of light. His sword techniques are as fast as lightning and flow as smoothly as water. Our hero is completely focused on the fight with a sharp and determined look in his eyes. In an instant, our hero had already executed 36 sword movements all at once. The older swordsman just watches the attacks coming his way without moving an inch. He remains still and calm, as the dust and energy from the blows dissipate around him. But inside, the master is completely shocked and speechless at what he just witnessed. The protagonist continues his assault with increasingly fast and fierce movements against his master. Even after the 36th strike, he showed no signs of stopping. The master remained still, observing his disciple's absurd speed without moving a muscle. Then a huge explosion of golden energy erupts at the side of the fight, making everything around it glow. Without stopping for a second, the kid continues his movements, reaching the 108th strike. Moment, a massive thunderclap explodes in the sky, completely changing the weather around them. With this, the older man is totally paralyzed and starts to break out in a cold sweat. Countless bolts of lightning gather in the sky to form a thunder dragon, something he had only dreamed of seeing. The energy dragon roars in the heavens, and the man can't believe his eyes. Paralyzed, the master is left breathless as he realizes that this is the legendary dragon's roar. He recognizes the manifestation of the four thunder swords technique at its maximum level. He then shouts that it's impossible because his dream was to master this technique and the kid did it in 7 days. But the shock was far from over as a new green energy dragon appears in the sky. In 5 seconds, a new dragon's roar echoes and the summer thunder sword is completed. Before it could disappear, the autumn thunder dragon emerges right after, almost at the same time. 2 energy dragons roar together in the heavens, while the master is floored by the unprecedented scene. At this moment, the protagonist movements don't slow down. Instead, they get even faster. Our hero continues to move faster and faster, looking like a golden blur across the mountain. In the end, his speed is so great that he becomes a true phantom of blue energy. Then, the strongest strike of the technique, the Winter Thunder Sword, finally reaches perfection. Completion of this sword felt completely different from the other 3, leaving the air heavy. The senior starts to break out in a cold sweat and is left speechless by his disciple's power. To the master, it was as if winter had arrived and all life was fading away. Only on move number 432 does the protagonist finally stop. The demonstration of his 7 days of study had officially ended and his master is dumbfounded. The young man then stops in front of his superior, awaiting a response on his performance. He maintains a serious and focused gaze even after executing so many movements at once. But our hero doesn't move and says that something is wrong because he relied too much on the sword. Our hero has a revelation and realizes he was limited by the weapon itself the whole time. He finally understands what his senior brother really meant to teach him with that lesson. The master is just standing there with a complete what the heck look on his face, having no clue what the kid just said. The young man says that a common sword only cuts, but the sword of the heavens uses everything as its blade. With that, our hero creates a sword of pure light with his hands, and his eyes begin to glow. Then he launches the attack, which creates a huge explosion of light, destroying everything in its path. The older man is shocked and wonders if he's dreaming because our hero had another epiphany out of nowhere. He thinks that if the Winter Sword was the personification of demise and destruction, then the aura of this moment was the complete opposite, full of rebirth and new life, full of vitality flows endlessly, creating a giant tree of life. Our hero stares at the energy sword he created, and in that moment, it seemed like the whole world. With a single casual move, that blade could cut down an army of 10,000 soldiers. The master is completely floored by the scene and can't believe what he's seeing. Then he panics and screams in shock as he realizes that this was the legendary sword intent. While the senior was freaking out, the young man simply dispels all that golden energy with a command. But our hero is disappointed and says he can no longer feel that sense of power. He laments having such great power, but says his talent is horrible because it didn't last long. Hearing the words horrible talent, the older swordsman just freezes, completely stunned. He then remembers that when he was a child, he saw a sword sovereign and chose this path. He thinks that the young man awakened the infinite sword intent, which makes him the greatest genius in the country. The protagonist then apologizes to his superior, saying he knows his movements are pretty average. In his mind, the master is freaking out, thinking he's nothing compared to the kid, but needs to keep up the act. With great effort to maintain his composure, he agrees that the disciple's movements were pretty ordinary. He wonders that if the kid is ordinary, then what does that make him? Even with a whirlwind of thoughts in his head, the senior maintains a serious and calm expression. Suddenly, Master notices something shining on a rock and asks what it is. Our hero hands him a notebook, saying it's notes from his training, and the senior asks to see it. With a serious expression, the swordsman begins to flip through his disciple's notebook. Inside the book were written profound principles about the sword movements he had learned. Reading the words was like looking at a starry sky for the very first time. He recognized each word, but together, they formed a concept as vast as the galaxy. Shocked, he asks if the kid wrote this, and the young man says it was just an arrogant guess. But inside, the master is losing his mind because he doesn't understand a thing and wonders how our hero grasped it all out of nowhere. He thinks about how he trained for a decade and only scratched the surface of a technique the kid mastered in 7 days. To make matters worse, the young man also achieved the infinite sword intent, which makes him feel like complete garbage. Trying to pull himself together, the senior tells the disciple to keep training and that he'll be back in a few days. Seeing his superior's expression, our hero thinks he found him unrelented and is going to kick him out. Desperate, the protagonist grabs his master and begs not to be abandoned, as he was finally accepted somewhere. He remembers that for half a year, no one would take him because he didn't have a spiritual root. The protagonist then thinks it's impossible he learned all that just by looking at the sky. With that, our hero becomes determined not to lose this chance, believing that everyone in the sect is a master. Meanwhile, at the sect master's residence, the place seems pretty peaceful and secluded. There, the sect leader is relaxing, sipping tea, and admiring the flowers in his garden. But suddenly, someone comes running and screaming in desperation that something terrible has happened. The newcomer is our hero's master, and the sect leader asks why he's so worked up. The swordsman then says that his superior's dream might come true, because the sect is about to produce a dragon. Hearing the word dragon, the sect leader is completely shocked, his eyes wide open. The sect master is confused and questions his subordinate about what he meant by dragon. He explains that the new disciple, who started from scratch, has already mastered the entire sword technique in 7 days. The elder says this is no joke, but his disciple points to the phenomenon in the sky as proof. The sect master then admits to himself that he thought it was just some expert passing by, but he realizes that the one responsible for all of it was actually the young newcomer. With this revelation, the sect leader starts to cry and shouts that they finally have a genius. At this, the swordsman tries to calm down his superior, who is completely losing it. Then the elder splashes water on his own head to calm down, remembering an old prophecy. His subordinate asks if they won't be holding our hero back, but the leader says other sects already rejected him. He continues saying that cultivation is about destiny, and that large sects are very dangerous. The master says hell, tell him the truth when the sect grows, and the young man can choose his own path. Convinced, the swordsman says he understands everything and will follow his superior's decision. The next day, the sect leader is chilling, enjoying his afternoon off. But suddenly, his moment of peace is interrupted by a disciple with bad news. The swordsman appears again and desperately yells that something huge has happened. The sect leader makes a very strange face. Thinking it's debt collectors, he tries to run away, saying the sect is now in his disciple's hands. The master stops running and gets confused, wondering if it's something else then. He then gets angry and smacks his subordinate for panicking and nearly giving him a heart attack. After the confusion, the scene changes to a beautiful view of the sect on top of a mountain. Now calmer, the superior asks what the problem is, and the swordsman hands him a paper to read. The document states that the administration office will investigate all unranked sects. To prove their legitimacy, they need to hand over 10 spirit stones in 2 months or they'll be shut down. And completely furious, the sect leader throws the table and yells that hell appeal to the emperor. It's explained that a single spirit stone costs 10 taels of gold, meaning they basically have to starve for a year to afford them all. The swordsman tries to calm his master down and asks how many spirit stones the sect currently has. Great shame, the elder holds up his hands, showing the number 7. His disciple thinks he means 70, but the leader says that's impossible. Then the young man wonders if he means 70 gold coins, but his superior denies it again. Desperate, he asks if it's silver coins, but the master, now on the floor, reveals it's 70 copper coins. Upon hearing the answer, his disciple completely freaks out and screams in pure despair. He can't believe they're that broke, but his superior confirms it's true. The leader then starts to explain that the sect originally had some savings, but he heard about a new cultivation fund and thought silver was a waste. According to the old man, it was a high-yield monthly return investment, a classic get-rich-quick scheme that everyone was jumping on. Except he didn't realize the scammers were after his money and ran off with everything. Crying, the sect leader admits he was tricked and asks his subordinate for a hug. And completely devastated, the senior brother thinks they're finished, and maybe they should just go their separate ways. The sect was completely done for this time, but the master pulls himself together and says he can't let the sect fail because now they have a genius. Suddenly, a giant blue bolt of lightning cuts through the sky very close to where they were. The sect leader is shocked and looks toward the direction of that immense power. The swordsman then recognizes that it came from his new junior brother's residence. The young man wonders what that was in the sky, if the newbie has advanced again. But the sect master says that's impossible because not even geniuses cultivate that fast. Then the leader says he's going down the mountain to get some stones and asks his disciple to look after our hero. 7 days later, the protagonist is still training on the cliff. There, the protagonist is seen training intensely with his new sword. He demonstrates incredible skill, executing several perfect movements. From a distance, his senior brother watches the protagonist's training. Hez shocked by the kid's progress and admits the phenomenon was real. The swordsman then thinks that the pressure of seeing that kind of talent is just too much. At that moment, our hero notices his senior and greets him with great respect. The young man says he has learned all 1,460 movements. The senior brother gets all emotional and starts to cry. Trying to compose himself, he explains that mastering the movements is just the beginning. He thinks he needs to exaggerate his words or his cover will be blown. With a curious look, our hero then asks which realm his senior is in. The swordsman then strikes an imposing pose to answer the question. He makes up that he's at the first level of the supreme path of the sword. And with sparkling eyes, our hero is impressed and calls him a hidden master. The senior continues the lie, saying that this level already makes him number 1 in 10 nations. The newbie is then shocked as he realizes his senior is the strongest of them all. Our hero yells that he must have become a dragon, and that he never imagined this in his life. He promises to train to catch up to his brother, and the senior feels bad about his kindness. The protagonist thinks it all feels like a dream, because just a few days ago, he was an ordinary man. The protagonist stares at the beautiful sunset. Meanwhile, his senior watches him with a very thoughtful look on his face. He asks if the kid used to be a scholar, and the newbie says he liked to read and paint. With a smile, the senior asks for help with a painting, thinking about the future. He imagines he'll be able to brag about having a painting from the future greatest swordsman of all time. The protagonist agrees awkwardly, asking his senior not to mind if it turns out bad. In his past life, our hero joined a painting society to win over a girl. He trained for 3 years and learned to paint, but in the end, the girl ran off with a rich guy. Completely devastated, he cries on the floor, because painting didn't save his love life. An hour later, back in the present, our hero hands the painting to his senior. With a smile, the senior thinks the kid looks quite handsome when he's serious. The protagonist is then seen completely focused as he dedicates himself to his art. He then hands over the scroll and asks his senior not to mind if it didn't turn out well. His senior brother tells him not to worry and starts to unroll the painting to see. But upon seeing the painting, his eyes go wide with pure shock at what's drawn. On the scroll, a breathtaking painting is revealed, showing the senior brother himself. Tiddy's in shock at the artwork, which depicts the glow of dust covering the entire sky. The Qingjin mountain range looks like a true paradise with flowers and trees. At that moment, he notices the painting's realism is impressive in its details. But what stands out most in the drawing is the figure of himself at the center of the work. With just a side profile, the painting captures the powerful aura of a sword immortal. The drawing is so vivid, it looks like the character is about to jump out of the frame. Keeps praise on the painting, saying its only flaw is that it can't possibly capture his full, radiant beauty. With that, our hero thanks him for the compliment and says it's a gift for his guidance. But looking at the work again, the swordsman notices something he hadn't seen before. He spots a small red signature in the bottom corner of the scroll. The signature reads, King Lion Hermit, and he teases the kid for giving himself a cool nickname. Suddenly, a powerful voice calls out for Changyu, the protagonist's senior brother. The swordsman recognizes the voice and says it's a transmission from the sect master. He then grabs the painting and wonders what his leader's solution could be. At the Taiyu sword sect, one of the 3 great sects of Qingzhou, someone launches a powerful attack. A powerful purple energy in the shape of a dragon manifests in the sky. We then see the sword comprehension cliff where a mark glows intensely. A man is shocked by the power of the sword mark from the 4 Seasons ancestor, but a woman beside him says it's obvious, as only geniuses would come to a place like this. Suddenly, the mark on the rock releases a wave of powerful energy over everyone. In that instant, a blonde young man shouts with joy because he finally understood the technique. He then pulls the energy from the cliff and concentrates it in his hand with a smile on his face. One of the cultivators is shocked to see that Su Heng has reached the great completion of the sword. The young woman comments that he's a genius for doing in 1 year what takes others 3. From a distance, the sect elders observe the disciples progress. One of the masters congratulates his colleague on having such a talented disciple in the sect. Su Heng's master smiles with pride but feigns modesty about the young man's achievement. Then another red-haired elder says it's too early to celebrate. He continues, saying his own disciples haven't advanced yet because they're holding back. Harried elder gets furious at the provocation and yells, but a third master intervenes, telling them not to fight because the leader has given an order. The other 2 then look on curiously, wanting to know the sect leader's plan. The man explains that the top 10 from the conference will receive a special prize. Hearing that, the 2 elders are completely shocked by the revelation. The prize is a token to enter the Taishuan Sword Tower and face its challenges. With a wick smile, Sing's master says his disciple will definitely get a spot, but his colleague warns him not to celebrate too early, as the shame would be great if he lost. The other laughs and bets that if someone from outside the three sects wins, he'll clean the latrines. The scene then returns to the Qingyin sect at the sect master's residence. Inside, the sect leader is seen talking with our hero's senior brother. With a confused look, the swordsman then asks what the solution to make money is. The master then reveals the solution to the sect's financial problems, a pile of junk. Outraged, our hero's brother asks if they're really going to make money with that garbage. With a smile, the leader explains that these are the sect's finest treasures and they're going to sell them. The swordsman refuses to go through with this embarrassment, but his master grabs him and begs for help. Suddenly, the elder spots the scroll and snatches it from his disciple's hands. The leader says the sect is going bankrupt and that they'll sell the painting too, to help out. With that, the two arrive in the city and go straight to the Likai pawn shop. Inside, an enthusiastic employee greets them and invites them into the establishment. The attendant asks if they're there to buy or sell, and the master says he has luxury items. Excited, the young man asks to take a look at the treasures they brought. But upon opening the bag, the employee's smile vanishes, and he sees just a pile of trash. The appraiser's expression changes completely, and he gets a look of disgust. Flipping through one of the books, he finds a picture of a woman in very skimpy clothes. The shop guy turns bright red with embarrassment at the book's content. Desperate, the master yells that that's the wrong item, and it can't be sold. Our hero's brother asks to borrow the book, and his master agrees without a problem. Then the attendant offers 10 of gold for all the junk, which shocks the master. The sect leader gets angry and tries to negotiate, but the employee doesn't care about the item's quality. The elder then tries to go down to 8 taels, but the young man's response is a flat no. Desperate, the elder offers 5 taels and says that's his final price. Deeply embarrassed, our hero's brother can't take it anymore and asks them to just leave. At that moment, the attendant notices the scroll and asks to take a look at the painting. Upon seeing the paper, the employee recognizes it and questions why they're pretending to be poor. The sect leader is shocked and then asks if that paper is really expensive. The appraiser confirms it, saying that the paper alone is worth more than 10 taels of gold. Analyzing the scroll more closely, he notices a red signature that shines brightly. Upon reading the name on the signature, the young man's expression changes to pure terror and astonishment. He then calls one of his assistants to talk privately about the item. The sect master is left completely clueless by the employee's sudden reaction. Meanwhile, the leader watches the two whispering in the corner. The colleague then asks if he's sure, and the appraiser confirms there's no mistake. With a completely different attitude, the young man smiles and asks them to wait a moment. The master and his disciple are confused by the change, but agree to wait. After an hour, the employee returns and says his boss has confirmed the artwork's value. The swordsman tries to tell the truth, but his master stops him from ruining the deal. Seeing his chance, the leader shows 5 fingers and says that's his final offer. He then laughs to himself, realizing they've completely misunderstood the painting. The appraiser looks thoughtful for a moment, while analyzing the elder's proposal. His apprentice calls him greedy, but the elder says it's all part of the strategy. To everyone's surprise, the employee accepts the offer of 5,000 taels of gold. The leader was about to celebrate his strategy, but he and his disciple are floored by the amount. With wide eyes, the elder can't believe what he heard and asks the young man to repeat it. The appraiser then calmly confirms that the offer was for 5,000 taels. The two then get suspicious and ask if the guy is messing with them. He then assures them that their shop is serious and never jokes about business. The swordsman is shocked and wonders how a casual drawing by his brother could be worth so much money. He then whispers to the master to accept the offer before they change their minds, as the sect would be saved. But with a serious expression, the master says there's been a misunderstanding and the real value is 50,000 taels. Completely shocked, the swordsman yells at the elder and asks if Hez lost his mind. The shop employee is stunned and asks if the master really wants 50,000 taels. The elder confirms it, saying he won't accept a single coin less. Distressed, our hero's brother mentally begs his master to have some sense for once. He wonders what kind of crazy painting would be worth that much money. To the surprise of both, the appraiser starts to laugh and praises their confidence. He says the shop owner was right and that they are no amateurs. The young man then suggests they talk openly about the price. He explains that for a work by the Shinglian hermit, the value isn't impossible to pay. The sect leader and his disciple are completely floored by what they just heard. They can't believe that absurd amount is a real thing. At that moment, the elder is freaking out internally because he just blurted out a random number. The master despairs, wondering how a drawing could be worth so much. He takes a deep breath and tries to stay calm to not blow the deal. His new strategy is to keep the conversation going to get more information. With a completely different posture, the master acts like he knows everything. He then reveals that other shops have also recognized the artist. The attendant continues the explanation, saying the name Shinglian hermit is no longer a secret. He has already become very famous among art experts. Even though he appeared only recently, has already been called the greatest scholar in the nation. His calligraphy is considered a perfect and unique work of art. The employee also says his painting skills are even more incredible. The passion in every stroke impresses everyone who sees his works. The young man tells them that all over the country, many women have fallen in love with his poetry. They are enchanted, admiring his scrolls and paintings. Many spend sleepless nights just imagining what the artist's face would look like. They dream of the genius man behind so much talent and mystery. Even the proudest scholars have surrendered to his genius. They all try to imitate and analyze his works to learn from the master. The hermit's unique style ended up causing a cultural revolution in art. It's a shame he vanished without a trace before the world got to know him. The employee continues, saying the world never had the good fortune of seeing his face. The only shame is that he disappeared before his works were discovered. He explains that scholars value reputation, but the artist treated it like dirt. This attitude makes him feel ashamed, and, at the same time, full of admiration. The master and his disciple are sweating bullets, not believing what they're hearing. The elder then realizes they're talking about the protagonist, his apprentice. The young man confirms that the story is exactly as he has heard elsewhere, but he warns that because it's a portrait, the painting has a major flaw. Our hero's brother feels awkward as he thought his own beauty added value to the painting. He feels like a complete idiot for thinking that and is embarrassed. With a dark aura, the master gets his disciple's attention. The elder reminds him that the price of the artwork will now be much lower than expected. Angrily, the appraiser laments that tens of thousands of taels have gone down the drain. He's furious that a simple portrait devalued the masterpiece so much. The elder's eyes glow red, and he says he wants to eat someone alive. His apprentice tells him to calm down so they don't blow their cover. The master pulls himself together and tells the guy to stop beating around the bush and give them a price. The shop then offers 10,000 taels since the painting isn't a landscape. Without a second thought, the sect leader accepts the offer on the spot. He says the young man seems trustworthy and asks him to bring the money quickly. After finally closing the deal, the two leave the shop and head back into the city. The sun shines brightly as they walk through the bustling streets. The apprentice then asks why his master didn't try another shop. The elder replies that it was enough and they should stop there. With a serious look, the sect leader reveals his strategy to the young man. If the news got out, they would be in great danger because of the artwork. Our hero's brother is impressed by his master's calmness and wisdom. The elder then brags, saying that's why he's the sect leader. With a satisfied smile, the pair finally look at the payment they received. They got the money needed to save the sect from bankruptcy. Celebrating, the master holds up the gold and shouts that they're rich, and the sect is saved. His disciple is also happy, as has never seen so much money in his life. But the joy is short-lived, and the elder scolds his apprentice for asking for a portrait of himself. The master then begins to wonder about the protagonist's true origin. He asks himself how many secrets the young artist is still hiding from them. Our hero's brother reflects that the kid might have his reasons or not even know about his talent, but he's confused about how the young man got such expensive rice paper. And with wisdom, the elder says they won't investigate because everyone has their secrets. He believes that when the time comes, the kid himself will tell them everything. The apprentice is surprised by the elder's seriousness and asks where they're going. He thought the master would try to get more paintings out of his younger brother. With a cunning smile, the sect leader says he's going to give his disciple a great gift. He wants to reward the young man for helping save the sect from bankruptcy. Then the two arrive in front of a giant and imposing-looking pavilion. The place seems very important and is surrounded by mysterious aura. Shocked, the swordsman realizes his master's plan and is speechless. He then asks if the elder really intends to enter the Pavilion of Origin. The apprentice questions if his master isn't going a bit overboard, as this is the most expensive shop in the entire city of Bago. But the elder tells him not to be afraid, because the money was earned by the younger brother, and assures him he knows what he's doing in important moments. The elder believes the sect's future depends entirely on the protagonist, and that their success is in the hands of that young genius. The swordsman insists the place is absurdly expensive, so his master shows him the banknotes with a confident smile on his face. Then the elder orders his apprentice to stop talking and act like a rich man, saying that confidence is the key to appearing powerful. Upon entering, they are greeted by two very beautiful women, who invite them into the mysterious Origin Pavilion. With this, the master is completely flushed and amazed by the place, thinking this is how the rich live, comparing it to the pawn shop. An attendant asks if they want magic tools or manuals, and the sect leader says he wants the best and asks for the price. The woman says that first-class manuals cost 100,000 taels, but luckily there's a 30% discount because it's the shop's anniversary. Our hero's brother is completely shocked by the absurd amount. He can't believe the price and goes into a full-blown panic. The other employee confirms the price with a smile and says that after the event, they won't find a deal as good as this one. Devastated, the young man feels like a complete pauper and realizes the world of the rich is something he can't even properly imagine. The master tells his apprentice to stop panicking and have some courage, but the young man whispers that their money won't even cover one set. Our hero's brother asks the woman the price of just an introductory volume, and this question leaves the sect leader very confused. The attendant is surprised and asks if he's sure, warning him that buying only the introductory volume is completely useless. The swordsman tells her not to worry about its usefulness, and the woman warns that the shop doesn't accept returns, so he asks for the price again. Whispering, the master thinks it's crazy to spend so much money, but his apprentice reminds him of our hero's incredible learning ability. At this, the sect leader recalls that the kid understood an entire technique from a single sword mark and realizes the young man can do it. The confident smile, the elder agrees that for that monster, the initial volume is more than enough, and that they'll make a huge profit. Shortly after, the attendant returns with 3 manuals that can be sold separately, and the elder asks which one is the most powerful. She then recommends the river flow sword technique and says a genius might even learn the next level from it, but the woman reveals that this is the most expensive one, and costs 9,000 taels of gold, which makes the apprentice's soul nearly leave his body in shock. Even so, the master decides to bet everything on his disciple's genius, and with a war cry, tells her to wrap up the expensive manual. He also orders the rest of the money to be spent on pills, and the young man asks if he's not going to save any, but the elder says no. Our hero's brother is completely paralyzed and stares at his master, surprised by the decision to spend all the sex money at once. The broken heart, the elder cries while hugging his money, reluctant to pay. Leaving the place, the master continues to cry the whole way, and the young man asks him to stop the drama because he's getting embarrassed. Suddenly, the elder has an idea and asks if the other 2 brothers will also be taking the alchemist and array master exams. The young man confirms and asks if they're going back, but the sect leader yells no way and forbids any talk of money for 2 months. Then the elder says he's taking his disciple to a secret place, and they arrive at a stall that sells manuals by the pound. The stall vendor asks if they want to weigh some manuals. The apprentice can't believe it and asks if this is really the secret place with treasures his master mentioned. The elder assures him there are treasures there, and reveals it's where he found the young man's sword technique, leaving him completely shocked. The sect leader starts haggling and calls the price a ripoff, so the vendor makes a counteroffer of at most 5 caddies. At this, the swordsman squats down to look for something good in the piles of books, while his master continues negotiating in the background. With a very serious and focused look, the young man begins to search through the piles of manuals for any useful technique, but he only finds books with bizarre and utterly useless covers and titles, like fighting manuals or suspicious romance novels. The young man gets furious and realizes it's all garbage, and that none of those techniques can actually be cultivated. The master returns very satisfied, hugging the shopping bag. Then the young man asks if his master isn't going to buy anything for himself, but the elder replies by asking what he would buy. With a smile, the elder says he's just an old man, and that his happiness is seeing his disciples and the sect doing well. The young man thinks his master's attitude is a bit cheesy, and the elder gets furious and threatens to punish him if he doesn't learn the technique in 7 days. The sect leader explains that he needs to learn the basics to be able to pretend he's teaching our hero, while they fool the kid with the fake manuals. The swordsman gets worried, and wonders if our hero, with his absurd comprehension, wouldn't be able to learn something even from those fake manuals. The elder bursts out laughing, and says the young man has been traumatized by the protagonist's talent, revealing that his technique didn't come from the stall. He explains that the stall's books are based on real techniques, but are ultimately just stories with no practical value. Showing some children's books, he says that would never look like a cultivation technique, and would only fool a newbie like our hero. The young man asks why he said head, give the books to the others, and the master reveals it was a joke and hell used them for decoration. The elder laughs hard at the idea of someone learning from that junk and swears head, eat the books if it happened. The swordsman then suggests tricking the protagonist into making another painting to solve the other brother's problem. The leader sighs as he's already thought of that, but feels bad about treating our hero like a money tree, even though the sect needs to grow. That's why the elder hates moral dilemmas. He gets very irritated and decides hell, think about it later. So he changes the subject and orders his apprentice to teach our hero for 2 months for a sword conference, which shocks the young man. The apprentice is completely shocked by the news of the conference and asks if his master is serious. He panics and warns that the protagonist has no internal power and that this is a real fight to the end. The young man remembers he participated before, even with luck, barely made it into the top 500, thinking our hero will get crushed. The master says hell, explain later, and tells him to lie to the others, saying they only recovered the money they lost. We return to the back mountain where our hero is practicing swordsmanship. We see the protagonist training intensely with his sword, creating several beams of golden light in the air. The senior brother cries with envy because our hero has already learned the sword's momentum in a very short time. At this, our hero notices his senior brother's presence and greets him, asking what he's doing there. The swordsman then approaches and asks if sword training has been getting a bit boring lately. With a smile, the protagonist says no, because he improves every day, so he never gets bored. This answer leaves the senior brother completely speechless, and he wonders if that's even a human response. The young man then says that if he is bored, he can give him a new manual to try and comprehend. Our hero's expression changes instantly, and with a desperate cry, he says he is very, very bored. He thinks that if a sword mark let him learn an entire art, a cultivation manual will make him ascend to the heavens. So the brother hands the manual to our hero, and reveals that it is the ancient art of the demon god. The manual shows an image of a giant demonic creature about to devour a muscular warrior. Our hero is impressed and thinks that a name like Cord of the Demon God can only belong to an unparalleled technique. With a crazy smile, he's certain his sect is a secret and super powerful immortal organization. The senior brother then makes up a story that he found the manual in ancient ruins, and that its origin is a mystery. He says that since our hero has a poor spiritual root, focusing on the body is the best option to get stronger. But inside, the swordsman is panicking over his own lie. He quickly says goodbye and leaves, thinking about escaping before his brother finds out the manual is trash. The young man is proud of his perfect plan, and can't wait to pretend to be a great master again. As night falls, we see the protagonist's silhouette on the peak, practicing with his sword. He continues his intense training, and remembers the new technique he got, the ancient art of the demon god. The kid thinks the name is awesome and much cooler than his previous technique, and he's eager to start. But our hero knows that to learn something new, he needs total focus and can't divide his attention. So he decides to control himself and strengthen his current technique before starting the new one. The scene then takes us to the residence of Change-Yu, the protagonist's senior brother, high on a mountain. There, the swordsman sits in a lotus position and prepares to finally study the real technique he bought. With total concentration, the swordsman begins to study the new sword technique they acquired in the city, but soon he falls into complete despair as he can't understand a single thing from the super expensive manual.
Alright, that's the end of the story. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.